hello to you guys. I had intended to be here live, but for some reason, and I restarted my computer and I didn't try to go live again after that, but I restarted it because I tried to go live and I couldn't. It like timed out, gave me some kind of error or something. So I don't know, but I'm going to go through Genesis 29 through 31 one way or the other. So rather than coming live, I am pre-recording and uploading this, and I apologize if you wanted to be live, but it's just technology, I guess. I did a short little video, kind of a setup for this chapter. It's kind of like deceivers being deceived. It's like deception that occurred revisited upon later, and it's kind of an interesting sequence when you look at Abraham and how he deceived the Pharaoh in Egypt and how that was revisited upon him being the father of Israel. So naturally the father of Israel is going to generate a line that is against Israel. So his deception was kind of big and his lack of faith was kind of big, the repercussions for that. And then Isaac, the deception when there was a famine, and he went to not Egypt, but a different land, and deceived the king of the Philistines that let him stay on that land into believing that his wife was a sister so that they wouldn't try to kill him and take her. And he's like, why did you do that? You could have just told us. I mean, lest we had innocently done something wrong and had, the Lord bring wrath on our heads. We would have just left her alone if you had told us, and you didn't. Well, what happened to Isaac later? He who deceived was deceived. Jacob and Rebekah and the blessing, blessing Jacob instead of Esau when Jacob claimed to be Esau to get the blessing from the father, orchestrated by his mother, who had been told when Jacob and Esau were in the womb that the blessing needed to go or would wind up being given to the younger, not the elder. So it would be given to Jacob rightfully, but the way in which they went about it was poor. It was bad. It wasn't poor. It was bad. It was deceptive. So then Jacob, who outright told his father Isaac that he was Esau, was not Esau, later would be revisited that deception back on him when it comes to who he's going to marry and the man giving his daughters in marriage to Jacob. So deception is never good. The will of God's always going to be done regardless. But honest, direct, forthright communication, let your yes be yes, let your no be no, sincerity, trustworthiness, honor, integrity, and obviously faith in the Lord is missing in some of these scenarios. And we can obviously, hindsight's 20/20, and we can look at these other stories and be like, oh, they should have done this, they should have done that. It's a little bit more difficult to apply to our own lives, right? It shouldn't be, but sometimes it is, especially when you're in the scenario and you think you can get out of something easier by just not being truthful about it or something. And we know that that's always going to come back and bite us one way or another. It just is. And so it's better to just never do that. Good habits, right? Easier said than done, I know, but that's kind of the sequence where we're at right now with Genesis 29 through 31, is we're looking at just after Jacob's deception of his father Isaac and the blessing and him sending Jacob away to Rebekah, sending Jacob away to her brother Laban's house to find himself a wife. The promise being that Jacob would not find a wife of Canaanites, not a heathen wife, that he would find a good God-fearing woman. So he did. He thought he did. What happened? And that's what takes us to Genesis 29. Chapter 29, verse 1. Then Jacob went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east. And he looked, and behold, a well in a field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. Thither were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in his place. One thing I do want to point out is that Esau was a hunter, Jacob worked the flocks, dwelt in tents and worked the flocks. Essentially, he was a shepherd or a kind of a husbandman. And that's going to come into play largely in chapters 30 and 31, is that the job, I guess, that he grew up with doing is going to be the way in which God blesses him. So that was actually kind of set up in chapter 27, where we see, where does it say? Maybe it's in chapter 26. Sorry, I want to find this. It was just a side note. Where does it say that he dwelt in tents? Oh, here we go. Genesis 25. Sorry about that. It's like, just came to mind, so I was trying to find it real quick. Genesis 25:26. And after that came his brother. This is talking about the birth of Jacob and Esau. Esau came out first. Esau came out first, and then Jacob came out second. The elder would serve the younger. The first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. After that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was Jacob. Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. The boys grew. Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. So he lived on the plains, and obviously the flocks are going to factor in. So he would have been very, very good at husbandry. We'll see that. So anyway, sorry, as a side note, because that's going to factor in. So Jacob is on his way to Laban's house, and he sees a well, and there's flocks gathered at the well. They rolled the stone from the well's mouth, watered the sheep, put the stone again upon the well's mouth in his place. And Jacob said unto them, My brethren, whence be ye? And they said, Of Haran are we. That's where Laban, Rebekah's brother, lived, where Jacob was being sent to Haran to find a lady. He said unto them, Know ye Laban the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. He said unto them, Is he well? And they said, He is well. And behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. He said, Lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water ye the sheep, and go and feed them. They said, We cannot until all the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone from the well's mouth, and we water the sheep. While he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. So she kept the sheep also. It came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, that the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. So he helped Rachel by rolling the stone out of the way so that she could water them. Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. So they're relatives, like, oh, we know family. So she's going to go tell her father, and they're going to welcome Jacob into the home. It came to pass, when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to the house. He told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, Surely thou art my bone and my flesh. He abode with him the space of a month. Laban said unto Jacob, Because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? So he's going to stay, and he's going to help Laban out, and they're going to agree to a wage. This is part of what is going to part of the recompense that Jacob is going to have to pay for his deception of his dad, and the blessing is he is essentially going to partly be deceived, but partly just not be done right by. And this is kind of the beginning stages of that. It comes full circle and is pointed out specifically in Genesis 31, where he says, look, I agree to a wage and you've changed it 10 times. basically Laban's not going to do right by Jacob. He's going to try to milk Jacob for all he can get out of Jacob work-wise, and then he's going to like pawn his eldest daughter off on Jacob without Jacob even knowing that that's the case. So Laban is not going to do right by Jacob. And it's unfortunate because Jacob was specifically sent to Laban for the purpose of, do right by your family. Like, I'm your nephew. Why would you take advantage of me? And that's kind of the situation that's going to happen, unfortunately. Laban's not going to come out better for it. And we'll learn that in chapter 31 also. Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah. So Jacob's going to work for Laban, and they're going to agree to a wage. Rachel's not Laban's only daughter. He's got an older one who technically should be married off first. But that's not what Jacob's asking. So Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve these 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. So he's going to serve Laban, work for him for 7 years for the hand of Laban's daughter, Rachel. Laban said, it is better that I should give her to thee than I should give her to another man. Abide with me. So he's like, okay, come live with me, come work with me. And it's better that I give her to you than to someone else. Why? Well, because he's a God-fearing man. Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love that he had to her. Time just flew right by. It's like the end goal in sight. He's working toward it every day. He's happy to work for it because he knows that what he's going to get at the end of it is going to be someone that he loves dearly, and he can't wait to be with her. 7 years is a long time to not have the person you love. And he's still not going to have her at the end of that 7 years either. Why? Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, the older one, and brought her to him, and he went into her. Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah, the maid, for an handmaid. It came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, what is this that thou hast done to me? Did I not serve with thee for Rachel? Wherefore hast thou beguiled me? It's like, we were married. Obviously, she would have had a head covering. He wouldn't have been able to see her. So he married her, and they consummated the marriage. And come the morning, he's like, yeah, this ain't the chick I thought I was marrying. So he goes to Laban, and he's like, what gives, dude? This is not who I spent the last 7 years working for. These are not the terms that we agreed to. Obviously, Jacob was upset, rightfully so. Laban said, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Do you think maybe he could have imparted that knowledge before the marriage had occurred, before Jacob had agreed to work 7 years for the person he didn't wind up getting? Probably could have had that conversation beforehand. Maybe. Fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou serve with me yet another 7 years. So he's like, okay, well, that's not how we do it in this country. So 7 years, I'll give you my elder daughter because she's the one who should be married first. So if you want the younger one, work another 7 years. Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel, his daughter, to wife also. So he worked for Laban 14 years to get the woman he truly loved. But she was the second wife, not the first. Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet another 7 years. Verse 31, when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Let me just pause there for a second. I just need to read something back over real quick because I think it's a certain way, but I don't want to say anything incorrectly. Okay, I'm going to not say that. Sorry. Verse 31. So he has Leah as a wife and Leah's handmaid, and he has Rachel as a wife and Rachel's handmaid. Rachel was barren, Leah was not. Leah conceived and bare a son. She called his name Reuben. This is the first of the 12. Leah's son Reuben, for she said, surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. She conceived again and bare a son and said, because the Lord hath heard that I was hated, he hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon, son number 2. She conceived again and bare a son and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Levi. The third son. And the fourth son, she conceived again, bare a son, and she said, now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she left bearing, therefore she called his name Judah and left bearing. So the whole purpose of me starting this was to see the book of Genesis and Revelation, or to see how what will be pointed to in Revelation started in Genesis. And this is significant when you get to Revelation 4 and you are seeing 3 stones in the throne room. When John is called, Jesus calls John to come up hither, and he's going to show him the things which must be hereafter, the start of the prophecy, where the present meets the prophetic. The first thing that John sees is the throne, and the one who sits on the throne is in sight like unto a jasper and a sardine stone. And there was a rainbow round about the throne, in sight like unto an emerald. So when we get to the book of Exodus, if we ever get there, but in Exodus 28, you are introduced to a garment that the high priest wears. And it is one of the garments that the high priest wears. It's the breastplate. And there are 12 stones in the breastplate representing each of the 12 tribes of Israel, from first to last in order. And so it gives you the order of the stones correlating to the order of the sons. The first in the breastplate is the sardine stone, representing Reuben, the eldest son. The last stone in the breastplate is the jasper, which represents the tribe of Benjamin. We don't actually see the birth of Benjamin until Genesis 35, but he's the 12th. So basically what that representation is in Revelation with the jasper and the sardine stone is that you're seeing the God of Israel on the throne. Insight like unto a jasper, last stone, and a sardine stone, the first stone, they're reversed, and that's kind of outside the scope of this conversation, but you are seeing the Alpha and Omega, the God of Israel, represented by the first and the last stones in the breastplate, obviously meaning that he is the God of everything in between also, but you're seeing the Alpha and Omega, God on the throne, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, represented by the first and the last stone in the breastplate, representing the first and the last tribe, sons of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, what's interesting is, so that gives you the jasper and the sardine, or reverse order, the sardius, which represents Reuben, and the jasper represents Benjamin. The emerald is the 4th stone listed in the breastplate of the high priest, representing the tribe of Judah, who is the 4th son. So what you're seeing in Revelation, when you see the throne and the one who sits on the throne, insight like unto a jasper and a sardine stone, Alpha and Omega, God of Israel, God of the 12 tribes of Israel. That's who you're seeing on the throne. And there's a rainbow, represents the new covenant, round about the throne. So it's encircling it, insight like unto an emerald. Why would there be something around the throne represented by the emerald? Well, the emerald represents the tribe of Judah. Judah is the tribe that Jesus is from, line of the tribe of Judah, the root of David. Who mediates the new covenant? The rainbow, again, represents the new covenant. It perfectly encircles the throne because the imagery there is John 14:6. The only way to get to the Father is through the Son, who mediates the new covenant. That's what you're looking at in Revelation. And that comes all the way back to Genesis, where you're told the order of the births of the Son, and then in Exodus, where you're given the order of the stones in the breastplate correlating to the births of the Son. So the jasper and the sardine stone are the last and the first. It represents the God of Israel, the Alpha and Omega. reversed because that's got to do with who's going to get to heaven first is the second group who accepts the gospel message. The Jews rejected it. They get there last, but they will get there. The second group to whom the gospel was offered, the co-equality of Jews and Gentiles brought into the dispensation of the grace of God after the Jews rejected it. Gentiles were invited to partake of heavenly promises through faith in Christ. So the second group to whom the gospel was offered will get there first, which is why the order of the stones is reversed, because the last shall be first and the first shall be last. So that's what that's a representation of. So who you're seeing in the throne room in Revelation 4, the elders are not an Old Testament priesthood. They're not Old Testament anything. They are a representation of new covenant things, which is why it's important to see the emerald roundabout or the rainbow roundabout the throne is like unto an emerald, because you're being shown new covenant representations. The emerald representing the fourth stone in the breastplate, correlating to the fourth son, who is Judah. So that's a little thing. Revelation in Genesis, the setup is here with the birth of the sons. So you have Simeon, you have Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, born of Leah. So we go to chapter 30, verse 1. When Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children or else I die. Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of thy womb? She was like, it's not my fault. Like, I did not do this. She said, behold, my maid Bilhah, go in to her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. She gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went in unto her. Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. Rachel said, God hath judged me, hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, bare Jacob a second son. Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. She called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son, and Leah said, a troop cometh. She called his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son, and Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. She called his name Asher. Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. She said unto her, is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband, and wouldest thou take away my son mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. God hearkened unto Leah. She conceived and bare Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. Leah conceived again and bare Jacob a sixth son. Leah said, God hath endued me with a good dowry. Now my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun. Afterwards she bare a daughter and called her name Dinah. God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. She called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. It came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go into my own place and to my country. So he's got 11 kids, and he's got 2 wives, and he's had children by 4 different chicks, and he's got a whole bunch of stuff. And he's like, okay, I worked for you for a really, really long time. How about we end this and let me go live my life? He said, give me my wives and my children for whom I have served thee, and let me go, for thou knowest my service which I have done thee. So 14 years plus he worked for this guy for probably not a whole lot, because it's a family thing. And he's like, let me go. I've been good to you. I've done right by you. So let me go live my life with my family. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. So yeah, Laban was enriched through Jacob. Of course he's not going to want to let that cash cow go, is he? And I'm not saying that like it's true. I mean, that's kind of how he viewed the situation. How Laban did was Jacob was kind of a cash cow. And so, of course, he's not going to want to let that go. I don't really know why he had that viewpoint toward him, but it's going to come abundantly clear that that's really how he viewed him, that he was being enriched through Jacob, and he didn't want to let Jacob go. He said, appoint me thy wages. And let's see. Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. He said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. He said unto him, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was little which thou hadst before I came, and it is now increased unto a multitude, because Jacob is a husbandman, and he's a good one. So Laban didn't have a whole lot. Well, how many years later now, he's got a whole lot. And that's part of the reason he doesn't want Jacob to go, because Jacob was a worthwhile investment for Laban. The Lord hath blessed thee since my coming, and now when shall I provide for mine own house also? So he's like, for all of these years I've done for you, and you have much to show for it, but what do I have to show for it? For my own family. He said, what shall I give thee? And Jacob said, thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will feed and keep thy flock. I will pass through all my flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. So basically what we're going to see here is that God gave Jacob a directive to take the colored and speckled and spotted sheep, which probably would have been seen as a lesser value. So he said, let me take all of these from the flocks, and you keep all of the other ones. We'll separate them, and I will not take any of yours, and you don't take any of mine. Just give me these, and let me be on my way. Laban's going to agree to that. But this is how the Lord is going to choose to enrich Jacob, is that these are going to be the ones who not only reproduce, but reproduce the best of the best, to the point where these are the only ones that will be reproducing, and Laban's are going to be feebler and far fewer. And this is going to be how the Lord essentially reimburses Jacob for his many years of service, indebted to Laban, who didn't do right by him. So this is the way that the Lord is going to choose to show favor to Jacob, and to show up Laban for not doing right by Jacob. And it's through the flocks. So it's the separation of the speckled and spotted to Jacob, and the other ones to Laban. And how the Lord is going to choose to reward Jacob is to increase his speckled and spotted and make them stronger and better. And Laban's are feebler and far fewer. So that's going to be the reward aspect for Jacob. So he says, I'll pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. So he's doing the speckled and spotted sheep and goats and cattle. So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, the brown among the sheep, shall be counted stolen with me. So he's like, if we separate these, and anything is found in my flock that shouldn't be there, that should be yours, consider it stolen. Take it back. Laban said, behold, I would it might be according to thy word. So they agreed to these terms. He removed that day the he-goats that were ring-straked and spotted, and the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them into the hand of his sons. So they divided them, the sheep and the goats and the cattle accordingly. He set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. So they separated their belongings, 3 days' journey, and they agreed to this division of animals. So Jacob is going to kind of set up a system. This is far easier to read in far easier to understand in a different translation than it is in the King James. But essentially, Jacob is going to set up a system of kind of a breeding system where the speckled and spotted ones are going to be drinking, and he's going to put something in the water that's going to draw their attention that is also speckled and spotted, so that it's kind of the way that they reproduce. And he's only going to put these flashy things that will draw their attention in front of his own speckled and spotted. He's not going to do this in front of Laban so that they would reproduce. He's going to make these like speckled and spotted sticks and put them in the water to draw the attention of his own flocks. And that's going to kind of be like the little breeding system that he's got going on, as they're going to hang out there and breed. And he's going to put them in front of the she animals that are stronger and better breeders and things like that. So he kind of devised his own system of like, okay, we're going to draw the attention of these animals who are better and stronger and mine, and we're going to breed them under these conditions. And we're not going to do that for Laban's. So he's going to feed Laban's flocks, but he's not going to breed them in the same manner as his own. And this is how the Lord is going to increase him, as through this like breeding system that he devises. So like I said, it might be a little easier to read in a different translation if you're just reading the story of it. But here's how he's going to do that. So in verse 37 of chapter 30, Jacob took him rods of green poplar and hazel and chestnut tree and pilled white strakes in them, so speckled and spotted sticks, made the white appear which was in the rods. And he set the rods which had pilled before the flocks in the gutters of the watering troughs. So he made these branches, speckled and spotted, and he put them in the water to draw the attention of the animals that were drinking at the trough. When the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. The flocks conceived before the rods and brought forth cattle, ring-straked, speckled, and spotted. So before the spotted animals, he put spotted rods in the water, and they brought forth spotted animals. Kind of funny. Jacob did separate the lambs and set the faces of the flocks for the ring-straked and all the brown in the flock of Laban. He put his own flocks by themselves and put them not unto Laban's cattle. It came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. And why did he do that? Because anytime that they conceived by looking at these speckled and spotted rods, they would bear speckled and spotted cattle, and those were his according to the division of animals per the agreement with Laban. When the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. The man increased exceedingly and had much cattle and maidservants and manservants and camels and asses, donkeys. So that was kind of his system, and that was the reward that the Lord gave him, the favor that the Lord visited upon him by doing right for Laban for so many years. Laban was not going to be too happy about this. Now, recall that they are 3 days' journey away from each other. Genesis 31, he heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob had taken away all that was our father's, and of all that which was our father's hath he gotten all his glory. Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. Laban was mad with him. The Lord said unto Jacob, return to the land of thy fathers, to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock, and he said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before. So Laban didn't favor Jacob like he did at one point. He was angry with him because he perceived that he had been slighted, and everything that he had been enriched enriched by God on account of Jacob was essentially being taken away from him, and Jacob was profiting instead of Laban, and Laban didn't like that. So he said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before, but the God of my father hath been with me. You know that with all my power I have served your father. Your father had deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. Well, yeah, he deceived Jacob by giving him Leah instead of Rachel and then making him work another 7 years for Rachel. And during that time, not giving him his due. So your father had deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. And if he said, thus the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said, thus the ring strength shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring strength. Thus God had taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. Because that was to be Laban's recompense for deceiving Jacob. It's always going to be revisited. What you sow is what you will reap. So if you deceive, you're going to eventually not, in the short term, you might gain from that, but in the long term, you are not. And Laban is realizing that he did not deal rightly and justly with Jacob. And so that is being borne out in God's favor upon Jacob, and Laban kind of losing out what he gained through ill-gotten means. It came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived that I lifted up mine eyes and saw in a dream. So this is going to be the explanation of the breeding system, the husbandry system that he put into place in the previous chapter, Genesis 30, 37 through 43, about the branches and the speckled branches and the speckled animals and the putting it in the watering trough so that when they saw it, they'd drink and they'd bear those same kind of speckled and spotted animals. So he's going to explain the process by which, or the dream that was given to him by the Lord and how he devised that process, and that was a result of the Lord favoring him, the Lord shining his favor upon Jacob. So here's the explanation of that process. The angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. He said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-striped, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowedst to vow unto me. Now rise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us and hath quite devoured also our money. So it looks like Laban didn't do right by his daughters either. So Rachel's going to take matters into her own hands and be like, yeah, he didn't keep anything to give us as our inheritance, so I'm just going to kind of take what I want. Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels. He carried away all his cattle, all his good which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting which he had gotten, and Padanaram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. So she's like, he didn't save anything for us to give as inheritance, so I'm just going to kind of take from him. Not the right thing to do, but she's doing that, and I believe we shall see how that shall be repaid to her in later chapters. Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, and that he told him not that he fled. So he took all of his stuff and his family and his wives, and they left without saying goodbye to Laban. Why? Because they knew Laban was going to try to stop them. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. It was told to Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled. Now recall that their camps were 3 days apart. We learned that in the previous chapter, that they separated their camps and they were a 3-day journey apart. So they're already 3 days apart, and Laban is being told after the third day of the journey. So essentially, Jacob has kind of a 6-day lead on him right now. He took his brethren with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey, and they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. So God's kind of warning him to watch himself. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares, and carried away my daughters, and captives taken with the sword? Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly, and steal away from me, and didst not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth, and with songs, and with tabor, and with harp? So like have a going away party. Why didn't you tell me? Well, because Jacob didn't have faith that that's how Laban would have actually reacted. Hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters, thou hast now foolishly in so doing. Now hast done foolishly in so doing. It is in the power of mine hand to do you hurt, but the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Now, though thou wouldst needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? Jacob's like, I didn't steal anything from you. He was actually very, very careful the whole time not to take anything that was not his. He did not steal anything. His daughter, Rachel, stole the images. Jacob did not, nor did he have knowledge that Rachel had done that. So what's Rachel going to do? Well, let's read. Jacob answered and said unto Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. So he said he didn't tell Laban because he didn't want Laban to keep back what was rightfully Jacob's. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them, the images. Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent, into the two maidservants, but he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them, and Laban searched all the tent but found them not. So she's going to lie to her dad here so he doesn't find what she stole. She said unto her, because Jacob said, whoever did it, like, let them die. And we're going to see that actually come to pass in a few chapters. So this is going to be revisited upon Rachel. She said to her father, let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. He searched, but he found not the images. Jacob was wroth and chode with Laban, and Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin, that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? Like, it took him 7 days to catch up when they were 6 days apart already. So he pursued him. He chased him down. Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. That which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee, I bear the loss of it. And my hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night, thus I was. In the day the drought consumed me, the frost by night, and my sleep departed from mine eyes. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 10 times. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. Laban answered and said unto Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. What can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? So Jacob is mad. He's like, I have done all of this for you for 20 years, for your daughters and for your cattle, and you've not done right by me. You've changed my wages 10 times, and I've done this in the heat of the day and in the cold of the night, in all seasons. Like, what more do you want from me? He's like, what more could I have possibly done? I have done you no wrong, man. Like, no wrong at all. It's like, get off my case. Leave me alone. And Laban, he just thinks that he's entitled to all of this. says, now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar, and Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones. They took stones, made an heap, and there they did eat upon the heap. And Laban called it a name that I am not even going to try to pronounce, and Jacob called it Gilead. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Gilead and Mizpah, for he said, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, behold this pillar which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be a witness, this pillar be a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and that thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. So I'm for Jacob to do right by his wives and not take other ones, and that they wouldn't harm each other. The God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judged betwixt us, and Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, called his brethren to eat bread. They did eat bread and tarried all night in the mount. Early in the morning, Laban rose up, kissed his sons and their daughters, and blessed them, and Laban departed and returned unto his place. So I am going to stop there. That is Genesis 29, 30, and 31. Now, what's interesting, we go through the names of the first 11 that were born. To Leah were born Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and then to Bilhah, who was Rachel's maid, Dan and Naphtali. And then you have Leah's maid Zilpah bearing Gad and Asher, then Leah herself bearing Issachar and Zebulun, and then Rachel bearing Joseph. Behold a son, hearing, attached, praise, judge, wrestling, troop, happy, blessed, reward, wages higher, honor, dwelling, adding. So basically, and then Benjamin, who will come in chapter 35, means son of my right hand. So basically, the story that's told in these names is, behold a son, hearing, become attached to him. And this is kind of the New Testament concealing, or excuse me, the New Testament revealing what the Old Testament is concealing. Behold a son, Jesus, call his name Jesus. Hearing, because faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And you become attached. The Spirit, you get the Spirit. You become attached to God through his Spirit. Praise, judge, wrestling, that's kind of like your old man, new man conversation, like Paul said in Romans, like Paul said in Romans 7, where you kind of have like your sinful nature until we're glorified versus your new man conversation, like what you know you should do versus what you actually do, like you're kind of wrestling there. Troop, army of God. Happy, blessed, reward, wages higher, honor, dwelling. Those are kind of like eternal promises, things to come, what we are guaranteed in the ages to come. Adding, and then Benjamin is son of my right hand. So you can kind of see a story in the names of the 12 kind of there. So I have said enough. I am going to end this here, but I appreciate your time and your attention. If at any time you have questions, comments, or feedback, please let me know. But that is Genesis 29 through 31. I will see you guys later. Take care.